You were promised a life that never showed up, and somewhere deep down, you're still waiting for it to arrive. Think about it. You did everything right. You got good grades because someone told you good grades equal a good job. You went to college, maybe racked up debt doing it because someone told you a degree was the golden ticket. You worked hard, kept your head down, played by every single rule that got handed to you, and somewhere around your late 20s or early 30s, you looked up and realized the life you were promised was nowhere in sight. No house, no stability, no retirement that feels real, just a nagging feeling that you got played. And here's the number that should stop you in your tracks. Millennials are on track to be the first generation in modern American history to be poorer than their parents at the same age. Let that sink in for a second. Your parents, with a fraction of your education, working jobs that didn't require a 4-year degree, often ended up with more wealth by their 30s than you have right now, with 2 degrees and a resume full of hustle. That's not a coincidence. That's not because you didn't try hard enough. That's the result of a system that sold you a story that stopped being true right around the time you needed it to be true. Picture 2 people standing at the same starting line. One of them is handed a map that's accurate. The other is handed a map that was drawn 20 years ago, before the roads changed, before the bridges collapsed, before half the paths just disappeared. Both of them run the race with everything they've got. Only one of them was set up to actually get where they were going. That second person, the one with the outdated map, that's you. That's an entire generation of you. So let's talk about why this messes with your head so much. Because it's not just about money, it's about trust. When you were a kid, the adults around you weren't lying on purpose. They believed what they were telling you. Your teachers believed it. Your parents believed it. The guidance counselor who told you to follow your passion and the money would follow, she believed it too. This wasn't some grand conspiracy. It was a set of instructions that worked for the generation before you, and everyone just kept repeating it like a script nobody bothered to update. Go to college, get a degree, get a good job. Buy a house in your 20s, start a family, retire at 65 with a pension and a gold watch. That was the deal. That was the whole deal. And for a long time, that deal actually worked. Your parents lived it, your grandparents lived it. So when they told you to follow the same steps, they weren't lying to you out of malice. They were passing down a formula that had worked for them. Without realizing the entire economy had shifted underneath their feet while they weren't looking. But here's the thing about growing up on a broken formula. You don't find out it's broken until you're already deep into living it. Nobody sits you down at 17 and says, hey, by the way, wages have been flat for decades while the cost of everything you need to survive has tripled. Nobody warns you that the same house your parents bought for 3 times their salary is going to cost you 8 or 9 times yours. Nobody tells you that the job market you're about to enter is going to want 5 years of experience for an entry-level position. Or that the healthcare system is going to bankrupt you for something as basic as a broken arm. You just find out, piece by piece, bill by bill, rejection email by rejection email. And that's where the psychology gets interesting. Because when a person gets lied to once, they get suspicious. But when a person gets lied to systematically, over and over, by every institution they were taught to trust, something deeper happens. It's not just suspicion anymore. It becomes a kind of quiet grief. A mourning for a life you were promised but never got to have. Psychologists actually have a name for this feeling, of loss over something you never physically owned but were led to expect. It's called disenfranchised grief. Grief that society doesn't fully recognize or validate, because on paper, nothing bad happened to you. You didn't lose a person. You lost a future. And there's no ritual for that. Nobody sends flowers when the life you were promised quietly dies. That's part of why millennials get accused of being anxious or burnt out or perpetually behind. It's not that this generation is weaker or softer, even though that's the lazy explanation older generations love to reach for. It's that you're operating with a nervous system that was built for one kind of world and dropped into a completely different one. Your brain was wired growing up around promises of stability. Work hard, get rewarded. Follow the rules, get protected. And then you spent your 20s and 30s watching that wiring get proven wrong again and again. That kind of repeated mismatch between expectation and reality does something to a person. It teaches your nervous system that the ground can shift under you at any moment, even when things look calm on the surface. That's not anxiety for no reason. That's a completely rational response to an irrational set of circumstances. There's also this weird trust wound that doesn't always get talked about. Think about how many times this generation got told something was a safe bet, and it wasn't. College debt was supposed to be an investment, and for a huge number of people, it turned into a lifelong wait that didn't pay off the way it was advertised. The idea of a stable career at one company was supposed to be a thing you could count on, and then layoffs became a normal part of the business cycle instead of the exception. Even the idea of retirement got shakier, watching pensions disappear and get replaced with the expectation that you just figure out your own investment strategy with money you don't have left over at the end of the month. Every one of those broken promises chips away at something. It teaches you, on a gut level, not to fully trust institutions, not to fully trust authority, not to fully believe anyone who tells you this is how it's supposed to go. And that distrust doesn't just stay in one lane. Once you learn that the system lied to you about jobs and money, it starts bleeding into everything else. You start questioning the story you were told about marriage, about when you're supposed to have kids, about what success is even supposed to look like. A lot of millennials are the generation that delayed everything, not because they're commitment phobic or selfish like some headlines love to claim, but because they watched the traditional timeline blow up in real time and decided they weren't going to walk blindly into the next version of that same trap. That's not dysfunction. That's pattern recognition. Here's something else worth sitting with. This generation grew up watching the internet explode in real time, which means you got a front row seat to just how curated everyone else's life looked compared to your own reality. You weren't just being lied to by institutions. You were being shown a highlight reel of everyone around you supposedly living the life you were promised, even when most of that highlight reel was smoke and mirrors. That comparison trap made the gap between expectation and reality feel even more personal. Like everyone else got the memo and you were the only one who missed it. Except nobody got the memo. Everyone was struggling behind their own filtered photo, quietly wondering the same thing you were wondering. Why does everyone else seem to have this figured out except me? What's fascinating is what happens psychologically after you catch on to all of this. There's actually a kind of relief that shows up once you stop blaming yourself. Because for a long time, the default reaction is to internalize it. You think, if I'm not where I'm supposed to be, it must be because I didn't work hard enough. I made bad choices. I wasted time somewhere along the way. That kind of self-blame is exhausting, and it's also inaccurate. Once you zoom out and see the bigger picture, once you realize this isn't a personal failure, but a generational pattern, something shifts. The shame starts to lift, even if the actual problems don't disappear overnight. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what actually happened here? And that question alone changes how you carry the weight of it. There's also this quiet redefinition happening underneath all of it. A lot of millennials are rewriting what success even means, not because it sounds nice on a podcast, but because the old definition literally doesn't work anymore. Success used to mean the house, the 2.5 kids, the steady climb up a corporate ladder. Now it's shifting toward things that are harder to put a price tag on. Flexibility, mental health, time, relationships that don't feel transactional. It's not that millennials gave up on ambition, it's that ambition got redirected toward things the old system never valued in the first place. Because the old system was never built to reward you for anything other than obedience to a formula that quietly stopped paying out. And maybe that's the real story hiding underneath all the headlines about millennials being broke or burnt out or behind schedule. This was never a generation that failed to keep a promise. This was a generation that kept every single promise it was given, and it was the promise itself that broke. If this video hit a little too close to home, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee through the link in the description. Every little bit helps me keep making videos like this one.